let some people get in the room. And before we get started, I just want to do a quick announcement to let everybody know what this is all about. John and I have been doing these weekly Photo Buzz live streams, and about 90% of the time we've been having special guests on talking about photography, marketing, creativity, and any other stuff that sort of creeps into the conversation. I just want to let you all know, in case you're like, we got a whole bunch of new people that signed up with the NoBS Photo Success Facebook group. I have probably over 1,500 videos from the last 15 years in my efforts, having interviewed and put on presentations and put on live events over and over and over again. I realized this a couple of years ago. I mean, holy shit, I got a lot of stuff. So I started putting it all in the Facebook group. So that's sort of a bonus benefit to being a member of that group. If you're looking for stuff, including most recently, I added the first ever webinar I did with our special guest, Mr. Brian DeMint. I don't know when it was, Brian, but it was about 7 or 8 years ago. I said, I got to get this guy in here. And we also did a whole series of print critiques, which I really enjoyed. I want to talk a little bit about that throughout this presentation.
Okay.
Because it's interesting. And, if anybody goes down a rabbit hole, the creativity, composition, and lighting, and art, I don't know of anybody that goes down a deeper rabbit hole than Brian DeMint, our guest with us today, whenever you're watching this, whether it's a replay. By the way, all the replays from these go into the Facebook group. And anybody watching live, meaning right now, you're allowed to ask questions. I mean, it's encouraged. So just go into the private chat. Now, they have to set something up in the private chat, right, John?
Yeah, and I just actually put it in the private chat there. If they just go to StreamYard.com/Facebook, just quickly, they do it one time only, and then every time you come in, it always works. And it just allows us to see your name when you come up on the chat. Like right now, if I put what I put in there, you see my name, my picture there. If not,
it shows up as,
it'll just say Facebook user and have just a square there or something like that. Facebook,
it'll show up as a QAnon or something like that.
Yeah. But now, luckily, I know who's talking because I'm watching it on my phone just to make sure everything's linking.
But nobody else.
We're about a 20-second lag with the live stream. So
feel free to ask any questions, and we're really excited today to have as a return. Been a while, Brian. How are you doing these days? What's new and exciting in your life? Can you update us before we get into some of the content we want to throw at you?
New and exciting. Well, I don't have anything there, but maybe new work. Something I was going to share when we have somebody in the room or people in the room was, it's actually been a horrible year for us. I've had a death in the family, and my brother's fighting cancer, and but it's been bad that way. But something good as far as the work has come out, because I was watching an interview with an artist named Maggie Hambling. And she said the best advice that she ever got was from one of her mentors named Let Haynes. And he said that you have to make your work your best friend. You have to be able to go to it, whatever mood you're in, whether you're sad or you're happy or you're randy or whatever. And so for the last few weeks, I've really been diving into the work. So if I'm not shooting, then I'm at the studio creating outfits or creating backdrops or props or whatever. So, having that outlet to go to has been huge for me to take my mind off of other things.
Nice. Yeah. So there's a lot of healing, a lot of creative connection, a feeling that you're tapping into that part of who you are and putting it out there. Just a quick, I don't want to go into it very deep, but are you guys on lockdown down there?
Not as of yesterday. Joplin lifted all of its mandates that it had as far as COVID. Restaurants and businesses can adjust as they need to or as they feel they need to. And, if they want people burning down their damn store, you got to remember where we live. It's most of the people around this area are pretty sure that it's a hoax. And, I'm not sure how we got the whole world to go along with it. India's kicking ass on this hoax right now. But, you know, so things are a little different here that I imagine they're different everywhere.
So you're allowed to shoot right now, no problem.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So yeah, we're
In this town, you're actually allowed to shoot people around. So
it's legal as long as you have justification.
exactly.
So we're we're in lockdown. We're just waiting a couple more weeks. It's been absolutely crazy. So it's a struggle. But that aside, I notice you've been posting a lot of stuff on your Facebook page, and but I got to ask you a question. What is the definition of randy? You just said that a minute ago, because I said that word once a couple of years ago with a bunch of millennials around, and they all looked at me like, ew.
It's the British.
I think of Austin Powers.
Exactly, and that's exactly where where
Okay.
most people learned it. It just means horny and from Britain. So yeah, so
You just had to clear that up.
that's what the Brits say. So
Yeah.
if you haven't learned anything today so far, there you go. Write that shit down.
I kind of knew what it meant, sort of, but I didn't know it was a British thing, and I totally forgot about the Austin Powers connection. So,
Yeah.
now you're retired now. Last time I talked to you or saw you in person, you were still working. You were gainfully employed, and I believe you retired a few years ago.
I did.
Does that open up more time for you to pursue photography and creative projects?
In my mind, that's where I thought I was going to go, but that's not where I actually went.
No,
There's when you quit a job that you've been doing for 37 years, there's a sense of, freedom, and you don't feel like doing anything for a little bit. And then, but then you kind of get a sense of, I'm not accomplishing anything. So, I instead of shooting so much, I actually started studying art a lot more. So I've been studying, 20th century art and modern art for the most part. So I did a lot of that, a lot of input of material. But now I'm seeing the output of all that material that I was taking in. So now, once again, my head is just filled with ideas that that I can do. And
that ties into a question I sort of put on the back burner. Before we came on, I said, what are some good questions I can ask Brian? One of the questions was, what is the one book that has influenced you the most? And perhaps we can segue that into a more recent book. I find that fascinating. You went into retirement thinking one thing and realized, I don't know, did you feel a little bit lost? Did you feel a little bit like there was a vacuum in your life? That's sort of the way I would perceive it to be. And would want to fill it up with something. And obviously you filled it up with education, seeking of knowledge, creativity.
I think for me, it had to do with being structured and not structured. So when I was working, I had a structured life, and I had certain times that I had set aside for doing photography and editing and that kind of thing. And then when it became all unstructured, then I just became a lazy bum is basically what happened. I started playing disc golf and doing some things that I hadn't done before that didn't tie into the art at all. And, I kind of got frustrated with the whole photography thing for a little bit. And I even was, thinking about quitting and selling all my equipment and all that. Yes. And so we were going to go ahead.
What got frustrated about it? Explain that one some more.
I think that I get as hung up on people talking about stupid ass shit like the rule of thirds than, because I just saw, like yesterday, I thought about this all night because it's pissed me off. Because somebody brought up the rule of thirds in another forum,
right? And
yet there was like 1,000 comments on it, and maybe 2 of them had some intelligence behind them.
Okay.
So because people still don't understand where it came from, and why it's used and that kind of thing, and other people think it's the one rule that you have to use. And I mean, I think, and I wasn't frustrated because they were using it or not using it. I was frustrated because they were arguing about the damn thing.
Okay.
So much time is wasted. It used to be cameras. Nikon and Canon. You know, people would be stabbing each other at these conventions. And they separate into separate groups. You know, we don't mingle with those guys
or computer systems.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
You don't edit on a Mac. Okay, so you're not an artist, is what you're telling me. Yeah. So I mean, that it's all that kind of stuff is just absolutely infuriates me, especially when people, all they have to do is a quick search on Google before they post something stupid. You know, that's I don't know, that kind of stuff frustrates me. And then of course the local stuff with the jealousy of other photographers and this model's mine and all this, you know, and all the crap that goes along with that.
That doesn't occur in our area, by the way.
No, I'm sure. It's
got to be a Joplin thing.
It's pretty specific to this area.
I think it's universal. So I find this interesting. Before we get off that topic, I want to pursue it a little bit more. You said you get frustrated with these comments, and of course you're talking about online. So we're talking about the height of the cesspool of narcissism, which is social media, Instagram, Twitter. Nothing worse than Twitter, but Facebook's pretty bad. So there's that, and we don't have to get into that. But what I want to ask you is, what are those two comments that were half intelligent or intelligent that you said? Why was it? What were they? I think that would be worth exploring, because you sort of mentioned that a second ago.
Well, one of the things was that the rule of thirds has been used for centuries by photographers. Okay, well, photography hadn't even been around, but maybe since 1830s, something like that. So I guess maybe 2 centuries. So, but you know, it absolutely wasn't. You know, it was first mentioned by some unknown painter in the 17th century. Then Sir Joshua Reynolds mentioned it in the 1800s, late 1800s, I think it was. And then the next time it's mentioned is in a camera or a Kodak how-to book from like 1952. So it hasn't been used all this time. And you know, somebody put a picture up of Renoir, the painter, and was trying to throw the rule of thirds on top of it. Well, shit, you can throw the rule of thirds on top of this webcam right now and say that it works, because we're in between the two, you know, we're in the center section.
I'm now in the 1/3 of my side here right now.
Exactly. Well, I saw people that were using examples of people actually center pose like I am right here, and saying that this followed the rule of thirds because I was in the middle third. Okay, so
the middle third.
Anyway,
wrap my head
you
around
can't
that
make this shit up. I mean, this is stuff that, and the other thing, you know, and a lot of artists have agreed with this, but I don't, that the rules were made to be broken. So, or no, you have to know the rules to break the rules. You don't have to know the rules to break the rules. People that don't know anything about the rules break the shit out of them all the time. Right. You know, look, I started studying a lot about what these people called outsider artists. Right. Which is really interesting. So if you look at like the photographer Miroslav Tichy, you know, he broke all the rules. He's a great photographer, but he was just a vagrant. They didn't even know the camera he used worked because it was just made out of homemade crap. Right. And now his stuff is hanging in the most prestigious museums in the world.
Who knew?
So I don't know. I think it's these absolutes that bug me, because if we had absolutes, then we wouldn't have people like Picasso and Matisse and Rauschenberg and Maggie Hamlin and all these people who Duchamp, you know, those people who kind of set the standard for the way that art flowed through the 20th century. So when you get into these definites, people want a formula when it comes to taking good pictures. You know, what are all your settings? Okay, here's my settings, but okay, well, I set it to that. Okay, well, were you using the same lights? Were you had the same, you
same
know,
lens, everything,
and intensity and all that? Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I understand why people want some settings, obviously, but but sometimes, they just want to be told how to do it.
Yeah.
If everything was
instead of-
absolute, everything would be boring. There'd be no versatility. There'd be no individuality. I mean,
There you go, right there.
So you get frustrated by all this, and you have a very specific take. I mean, I think you're mostly self-taught. I think you went to school at one point in your life, if I remember your bio, in art. Is that correct or not?
I went to college for art, and it was very objective. Draw this skull,
Right.
and it was awful. And
So you have a passion for it, obviously, and now that you're retired, you're getting back into that aspect of. You almost quit photography, which would have been a sad thing. I'm glad you didn't. So you have a very specific. I don't want to say very specific. You have an attitude, a take, perception on art, and art as it applies to photography, whether it's taking components of a beautiful oil painting or an abstract painting or a whatever artistic medium. We can put it all under the same umbrella, so to speak. But as far as defining, if you want to define it, I hate using that word because really it's kind of open-ended. But can you somehow define in the way Brian DeMint would define, what is it that would create a beautiful photograph? Now, also put in context, like as if you're explaining it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Am I throwing too much at you there at the same time, or does that make sense? I could be full of shit. I could be full of it at the same time.
I feel like like I'm not understanding it at all, but I think the last thing you said, if you take a picture like a 5-year-old, it's probably going to turn out great because you don't have all these preconceived notions of what other people think that this photograph should look like. So you're not following the rules of composition. Sometimes I will shoot, if I'm shooting a dancer, a lot of times I will not look through the lens. I will not look through the viewfinder. I'll just hold it up to try to divorce myself from the rules of composition. If you're shooting in a crowd or something like that, sometimes that's the best way to do it because a diagonal and odd angle, obtuse angle will make it look more chaotic. Whereas a simple rule of composition would make it look less chaotic and more formalized. Structured, exactly. And, I think the question too, for me, you bring up the child thing, and it's really interesting because I was getting ready to give a lecture one night, and I went for a jog beforehand, and this kid had drawn some images in the gravel with a stick. I saw her doing it, and when I came up on him, I was just mesmerized because with photographers and artists, we have to have this camera, we have to have this medium, we have to do it this way. And here is a kid making terrific art with a stick, and she didn't care if anybody else saw it or whatever. And she wasn't concerned that she didn't have the right stick or she didn't have the right medium. She was just creating. And they were super fun to look at and interesting and like nothing that I had actually seen before. She made these little designs and stuff in the gravel. So it was, I think if we get back to this thing about trying to worry about how many likes we're going to get on Facebook and just putting our art out there, then maybe we can get to a point where we're not putting out art like everybody else is. I don't know if that even got to your question.
I don't even know that I even know what I was talking about when I came up with the question. I was trying. But I'll tell you what I'm fascinated about, and this is this. Okay, so somebody made a comment, Brian has inspired me to study and incorporate different types of traditional art styles into my photography and even modeling. Thank you, Brian. I don't know who that is because their name showed up as Facebook user. But the point being there, and I agree 100%, I feel the same way. I know when I first met you, we did a lot of webinars. I think we did 2 or 3 strictly on composition and stuff like that. We got into art, and you brought up a lot of your favorite artists, and I was completely smitten by it, as I still am to this day. Now, you and I were like opposites in many ways, and am not of the artistic world that you come from, and mostly and largely because for 40 plus years, this has been my job. So I am compelled to go at it like I got to make money. I got a mouth to feed to a family, and I got bills to pay. So that's diverted me away from the journey that you took. I have full and total appreciation and fascination with that journey, because the whole artistic side of things is like, it's really cool. And the way
it is, but I'm sitting here without pants because I can't afford them. So,
Well, don't stand up.
I think that is one of the things that people have to make a choice on early. Sometimes, a balance. If you could get to a good balance, I had a job that I couldn't quit because I was just making, ridiculous amount of money for my knowledge that I had, which was next to nothing. And so, but for me, I wouldn't, now I just shoot what I want to shoot. I don't take on any commercial work at all. So you have to decide whether you're willing to compromise your vision for money, or if you want to just do it for artistic reasons and hope to God somebody decides that they like it enough to pay for it, which is kind of shaky when, the landlord's, nailing up boards across your front door and shit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's an interesting point, well taken on both sides of the fence, and they're both relevant in many ways. But
Of course.
you have that artistic bent, and it shows in your work. And I was telling John earlier about, and maybe we can touch on this briefly. I know when you first came to one of our infernos, you pulled out your camera and you told the story of your first camera. And I don't know if you bought a new camera since then, but can you give us that, just kind of touch on your first camera quickly and tell us if you got a new camera since then, and talk about when you discovered how you discovered the lens came off and you didn't know that originally. And,
okay. So that was like my third camera, actually, I think, because I dropped my first one and then that didn't work. And so actually it was about my third camera, and I went to Best Buy and I said, I need a camera. And he said, what do you shoot? And I said, usually attractive women in low light. And he's like, dude, I want your job. And I was like, no, your job is to sell me a camera. And, so he said, well, I would get this one. And I said, well, box it up, because what am I going to do? Argue with a Best Buy official employee about, what is the best camera for me to use? Hell, I didn't know anything about cameras. And then after I had this camera for a little bit, I was at some conference or something, and I met somebody. Anyway, they sent me a lens. And they were like, here's another lens for your camera, try it out. And I was like, well, shit, no, my camera came with a lens. I bought a fancy one. And they were like, no, you can use this lens in addition. And I was like, I didn't quite understand what was going on there. And so I finally figured out that you can take your lens off and put another lens on. You don't need a monkey wrench to do it. I found one of the big tips in some of my first lectures was there's a button that you push on the front of this camera, and that lens releases a hell of a lot easier, than it's hell to get off.
Yeah.
But pretty much true story there, embellished just a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Well, I always remember that story, and your light source, and how we all got a pretty good chuckle out of that. And the whole point being that it's not about the equipment. Did you upgrade your light? Because you were using this like $7 garage light with a bulb.
Yeah, I was, and I did upgrade it. But it's funny that you bring that up, because I was at a big conference one time, and this guy came over and said, you see that group of people back there? And I said, yeah. He said, you know they're laughing at you, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, doesn't that bother you? And I said, dude, I'm the speaker. No. So I would feel more stupid if I came to watch somebody that I thought was an idiot and spend all this money. So, you know, I don't mean that in any sort of a rude or condescending way, but, you know, you use what works for you. And as far as that little Walmart light, it worked for me at that time, you know, because light is light. What's the properties of light? How much there is, what temperature it is, what it's diffused by, besides the, you know, and maybe how long it lasts. And besides that, there's not a whole lot of other properties to light. So it worked for me at that time. I have changed and I've gone to LED flat panels. One, because I'm always knocking these things over, so they don't bust. So they last pretty good. They come with barn doors. I can get them for less than $100. They can, you know, I can change the white balance on them. So it has a lot more versatility than just using, you know, and I think one of the things that people didn't understand at the time was that they thought that I was waving this around saying, hey, look what I can produce with this piece of shit.
Right.
No, I didn't think that. You know, I wasn't like that at all. It was like, this works for me. And so if it works for you, and a lot of people did end up trying it, and they said for like their boudoir sessions and some of this low light stuff that it worked very well for them to create, you know, little nuances of light and not be overblown and blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't a matter of I can do this with crap. It was more of I'd rather spend the money on the makeup so the kids don't break out and have, you know, we don't have people with their eyeball hanging out by the end of the session because they're allergic to this makeup. So, you know, and I, you know, honestly, more money goes into me buying stuff to make outfits and that kind of thing than I've ever put into the lighting.
Yeah. You know, it's if I can make a comment on that, it seems you took a path. I would say the ideal path that it's like when you're training I don't know, pick anything. Let's go with somebody who's taken martial arts. They can't get ahead of themselves, but in photography, everybody gets ahead of themselves because they jump into the equipment, they jump into the lights, and they look for that. What is the algorithm that I need to know in order to make this happen and shoot just like you? However, you went in with the mindset that you wanted to create something strictly almost exclusively from an artistic sense. Whether or not you did that consciously or whether or not it was just something that just sort of evolved unconsciously or somewhat in between. Does that make any sense?
It does. And it was something I went into consciously because I was an oil painter and, you know, I wanted to be a portrait painter, but, and, you know, and had it been 1400 instead of 1900, it might have been a better choice. But since cameras came out, it kind of threw that business, you know, to the backyard. But I always wanted to say that I wanted to find some sort of in between oil painting and photography, and that's and I still stick to that ratio. Sometimes it's more photography and sometimes it's a little bit more painterly. But I haven't quite got there yet, but it's always the attempt.
Well, a lot of his photography is very painterly like a lot of the colors and just the way you mix things together. It's great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it is. Does that a lot of that come from your years of oil painting?
No, you know, I'd like to say that it does. Most of it comes from me just studying different various art movements. You know, like when I go to paint a backdrop, because I don't have any real backdrops. Travis gave me one, you know, when he owned the backdrop store. But besides the one that was given to me, I don't have any that I've actually purchased. So, but in an attempt to be different, I looked at like the abstract expressionists from the 50s. So people like Jackson Pollock, who you may have heard of with his drip paintings, you know, so I look at the colors and I look at the lines and the expression and the thing, and then I'll try to mimic that a little bit, or I'll go back and look at like the Brotherhood of the Pre-Raphaelites, which is a really interesting group, especially when you get into the technical aspects, because I won't get into it, but I look at how they worked and what their subject matters were and things like this, and I'll draw from that. And visiting art museums is one of the best things that you can do to expand your art knowledge and be inspired. So you're showing a web page there. I haven't updated my website in probably 8 years.
This is old stuff.
This is all old stuff here, but not that I'm not
I love it.
not that I'm not proud of it or anything like that. It's just, yeah. But you can see the various styles there that come from different periods of art, and I'm influenced by different cultures as well. I've watched I don't know anything about India very much, but I love East Indian movies, and I love the ornamentation that they wear and the colors, and but of course in today's society things have got a little bit touchy about what's the word that they use all the time? Appropriation. They don't understand sometimes that for me, it's always appreciation. Yeah. When we quit dividing everything up, then we will be one. So I think that's more where we need to head, instead of, screaming about each other because you appreciated somebody's look so much that you felt that you wanted to put it into your work. So if you look at fashion design over the last 100 years, of course it was appropriation or appreciation, however you look at it, that's inspired fashion designers for forever. We'll just say forever.
Yeah. And I noticed in your bio too, you for a while, I guess, I don't know if you still do or not, but you worked for a fashion magazine, doing a lot of stuff for a fashion magazine.
Oh, I've worked for a few, actually. Not real. I mean, it was all freelance stuff. So, yeah. And I think that's one thing that's really made the internet terrific as far as photography, is because it's a small world. So one of the first fashion magazines I worked with was from Indonesia, called Fiore, which is flower in Indonesian. And so it was really interesting. I mean, we had a little bit of trouble with communication, especially with humor, because one time he sent me like all these I don't know, it just said he, she, it, them, they, and then ha 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 after, and I was like, well, this is either over my head or stupid. So I don't know. We lost something here, but the fact that I could work for a fashion magazine or do freelance work for a fashion magazine completely across the world is a wonderful thing.
Definitely.
It's exciting, no doubt.
And if you carry that a little bit farther, that art is universal. That people in Indonesia didn't have a preconceived idea of what their fashion magazine should look like, and use all Indonesian photographers. So I thought it was interesting that he reached out to me and allowed me to shoot for the magazine.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
You said something about you spend more money on outfits and the creation thereof. So obviously that ties in with what you were just saying. If you see an outfit that's inspired from an East Indian, maybe a traditional or a modern outfit or whatever, or maybe it's a mythological symbol or whatever, it's something that to you is fascinating, and you'll spend money on those outfits. So do you hire somebody to sew something to put it together? You go buy whatever materials you need to buy to put this together, and you have this vision in your head that you're going to create with a particular client or model down the road?
I'd love to say yes to all that, but it's probably no to every one of those questions.
All right.
I don't have a preconceived notion of exactly what I'm going to create. It's just that I like this material. I'm going to purchase a few yards of it and go home and try to make it look like an outfit.
Okay.
My wife will sew for me a little bit if I need it, but for the most part, I use hot glue. And, I don't need an outfit that somebody's going to wear all evening or wear to their wedding. I need an outfit that lasts 15 minutes, and then I'm probably going to rip it all apart and deconstruct it and reconstruct it into something else again. So, and looking at these fashion designers, like I watched Iris Van Herpen. She creates these really intricate designs that, they look like they were done on these 3D printers and things like that.
Right.
And they're really interesting, but it got me thinking about sculptural type things. So I went out and bought a bunch of foam, and I've got this big sculptural type dress that I made. And it was, and it was one of those things where you just start doing. Sometimes you can sit there and think it out, and the longer you think about it, you're actually not accomplishing anything. And it's like coming up with a great idea. You sit down, you have no notions, and you think, I'm going to sit here and eat these Cheetos and come up with some fantastic idea. Well, after you have that fucking nap, because that's what's going to happen, because you're going to fall asleep and you're going to wake up with Cheeto dust on you with no ideas, because that's not how creativity works. Creativity, I think, is like energy. It never dies. It just changes form. So when I see somebody like Iris Van Herpen, and then I take those ideas mixed with what I have in my head already and create my own take on what she was trying to do or what she's doing. So I think for me, it's just the process of doing, just getting in there and start making something, start draping, start something. I don't usually start with a sketch or anything. Sometimes I'll sketch something out but and if there is anything in my photography that I feel a little bit let down on, is that I've created, probably a quarter of the outfits that the girls are wearing or embellished. And nobody says shit about that. It's always about, I like this photo or whatever.
Right.
And then I borrowed a headpiece from somebody, and everybody wanted to buy it. And I was like, okay, now I'm unhappy. This is some foam covered with aluminum foil, dude. And so anyway.
You don't take it personal, do you?
Oh yeah, I take it personal. If I I need to start writing these people a form letter, comment on something besides the
photography.
Get it right. Well, it's funny you bring this up, and I asked you the question just a minute ago about spending money on outfits and material versus equipment and whatnot. For some reason, it's never occurred to me that was a strategy, and for some reason, all of a sudden, it is. I'm aware of it now, and that's why I wanted to ask you that question. And probably it's a good thing. I mean, however you get there, and I like what you said. You buy something you're fascinated with, and then you'll just create and let it sort of free flow. It'll be stream of consciousness. You'll create something visually from it, and then you don't get much in the way of feedback from others. And maybe that's a good thing, because maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's your ego is not in the picture. Your ego is aside, and it's more about the purity and the authenticity of the final image, which I think is really what counts the most. Does any of that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, for sure. And, and I'm not saying that I don't appreciate people liking the image. And I think that they just view it as an overall thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe a lot of times they don't even realize that I've created this outfit, because I don't put on there, creation or styling by me type of thing. Yeah. So I don't know. But I can say this, that I'm more inspired by fashion designers than I am photographers.
Okay.
Because if I look at a lot of photography work, then I find myself either consciously or unconsciously aping that work a little bit.
Mhm.
And sometimes that might be a good thing, but sometimes it can translate pretty definite over. Whereas like if you look at a fashion designer or you look at like a painter, it's very hard to translate that exactly over into photography. So there's got to be some interpretation there instead of just a copy of what's going on. I will say that I have a little Facebook group myself, and I found that they responded less to the artists that I was putting up than the photographers, because that seemed more direct to them, the photographers. So studying people like Erwin Blumenfeld, when you start looking at the stuff that this guy did in the 50s, it's just crazy how creative this man was.
Who's that again, Brian? Sorry.
Erwin Blumenfeld. In the 50s, he pretty much set the standard for fashion photography in the 40s and 50s. And his creativity was just off the charts, just stuff nobody else was doing. And Vogue and Harper's Bazaar was going for this stuff because it looked different than what everybody else was doing, and he was a master of color.
I was going to ask John, is there images on Brian's Facebook page that are more current? I mean, are there some there? Maybe John can go dig them up and we could talk about some of those. And I want you to go back to that other image you showed a minute ago, John, because I have a question for Brian on that.
Okay.
And John, don't let me dominate. If you have any questions,
No, you guys go.
cut me off.
I'm enjoying what I'm hearing. So
That's fascinating.
Well, that's good. If John was laid back in his chair, sound asleep, then we'd have to change it up a bit.
Show the comments on here, would you please, John?
I sure can. Where is it here?
They showed up a second. There it is. No, scroll up. Dream come true for me. That says it all.
Well, when you're talking about somebody like Melanie Anderson, who is not only an amazing photographer herself, an amazing businesswoman, how many photographers does she know? And she asked me specifically to shoot her daughter. That meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
And I that kind of stuff means a lot to me. I'll just put it that way. I will tell a story real quick. And
Go for it.
so when I first started photography, I thought I was going to get into it for certain reasons, to create art and things like this. And then I had a young lady come into the studio. Her mom had brought her in. She was about 16 or 17 years old. And that kid did not want to be at the studio. She did not want her picture taken. And it was very obvious to me, the body language and all that. So, but her mom had already paid for the session and stuff. So I took the kid to the back and I said, look, I understand you don't want to be here. You're making that really obvious to me. And I said, I'm sorry that you're here, but your mom's already paid me the money and I've already spent it. So we're either going to take pictures, I'm going to go up mow your fucking yard, or something's going to happen. I can tell you which of the two I'd rather do. And so she's like, I'm sorry. This is just not who I am, type of thing. So I said, well, let's just get it over with and we'll just do the best we can. So we did her hair and makeup. She started posing, and she was just a natural poser. You know how those people are. Mm-hmm. And she was gorgeous. And I showed her a couple images on the back of the camera, which I rarely do because I'm actually a pretty crappy photographer. I'm an okay artist, but crap photographer. And she started crying when she saw him. Right. And I said, oh, shit. I said, I'm so sorry, kid. I said, I didn't mean to make a bad situation worse. And she said, no, you don't understand. She said, this is the first time I ever thought I was beautiful.
Unbelievable.
Now, if that doesn't change your view of what you're doing, that you need to understand that camera that we hold in our hands has the ability to change how people feel about themselves and to give them back self-worth and self-confidence and that type of thing,
Yeah, that's cool. I love that story. You've said it before, and I was hoping you were going to say it again, and I'm glad you brought it up. I got to tell you though, I've never had anybody start crying when I've shown them pictures.
Well, I've had it go the other way too.
Well, that can happen too.
Oh my God.
But you know, you say, okay, what is the equipment I need to buy? What is the technique I need to use? What lights do I need to buy in order to achieve what it is that Brian has? And I look at it and go, okay, what is it that he's bringing psychologically to the game that he's been able to create that sort of an effect on clients? Because I've actually heard that from other photographers, but I've never, maybe it's just me underestimating my own skill set and experiences and whatnot. But the idea that I find it fascinating. I think there's a psychological aspect to it. When you create an experience, you literally connect with them at a subconscious level and create images then that are manifest, you know, through the lighting and composition and everything else. And then there's something there. There's that something, that little mojo, whatever that thing is. I had a photographer on last year, John. Do you remember her name? I think she's from Atlanta. She's a commercial photographer. We got deep into that because she has a condition where I can't remember what it's called, but she cannot read emotions or something like that.
Oh yeah, I don't know her name, but I know who you're talking about now. Yes.
And she has this uncanny ability to pull things from people. And
Wow.
this is where
If
I'm
I'm
going
not
with
mistaken, she couldn't even remember. Like, you can meet her one day, and the next day she'll forget all about you. She won't even remember who you were.
this. Yeah, that
Wow.
and that's part of the experiential side when you're dealing with a client. And I believe there has to be that to a deeper level in order to produce expressions, a different level of something above and beyond everything else, above and beyond technique, lighting, composition, and all the outfits that you create. And well, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying here, but I could say that the outfits probably play a big part too. I mean, I don't want to make it so black and white sounding, but
Yeah. Well, I can tell you part of what it is. Why we have maybe a little bit more rapport than some photographers is that when they're getting their hair and makeup done, I'm right there.
okay.
I'm not in the back setting up or anything like that. And I'm explaining what we're shooting.
Okay.
And I say, you know, so we're putting on this elegant outfit. So I want you to think, you know, elegance, long fingers, long neck, that you're better than everybody else. Give this sense of air of, you know, that you're really something. Or, you know, or this is a sad piece, you know, or maybe we need to go someplace where you think about something awful, that type of thing.
Something dark.
Which is horrible, but it actually works, you
Mhm.
know.
Given the situation. Yeah.
But also why I'm doing that, I'm also asking them, hey, what's your favorite music? Who's your favorite band? What's your favorite movie? So I don't have preconceived shoots. They don't really start thinking of ideas for that person until they show up at the studio.
Uh-huh.
And we shoot maybe 3 or 4 things. Well, the first thing is usually semi-generic. And then the ideas are formed kind of by what their interests are.
Okay.
So I think that helps them get more into what we're doing.
Bringing their personality into the shoot itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think we've hit on something, and I've never heard you discuss this before. The fact that you sit down and talk to them, and you're really focusing in on them and their individuality. You spend that whole time, because hair and makeup could take an hour, easy, right?
Well, depending on, you know, with Dina, she's awesome because she does the makeup and she can do it in probably 30 minutes. And then I do the hair for almost all the images.
Okay.
Okay.
Unless it looks really fancy, then Dina's done the hair. If it looks good, Dina did it. If it looks like a pile of shit, then I did it. You know, and I like doing the hair because I know nothing about doing hair. So therefore, it's going to look different every time.
All right.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit of avant-garde crap going in there.
Why did I not know that about you and hair?
Yeah. Well, you know, when you start losing your hair, you know, it's like, I'm going to be envious and play with your hair for just a little bit.
Well,
I always make that as a
know-
joke to my clients when I'm going to fix their hair. So I'm like, how does it feel to have a bald man coming over here playing with your hair?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think it takes them off guard a little bit for sure, because there's nothing you can screw with more than either the wingtip on somebody's makeup or their hair. I mean, that's
yeah.
it makes a big difference. But yeah, because I don't have anything really to set up lighting wise, besides turning them on, and that's all I got.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think spending that time with them and letting them, get to know me. So by the time we get back to the studio, it's not like, hey, there's this, because I shoot in a warehouse. So if there's no rapport, then it's just an old dude shooting young chicks in a warehouse, which is probably not the coolest scenario that most moms would like to hear about.
Yeah.
So
It brings me to the question too, like how do people find you? And like, because this is obviously a distinct client that's going to come to you. It's not like Rob and I, where somebody wants a family portrait or they want a headshot. They're just going to look up on the line there and say, okay, who's the best headshot, or who can I get to do a family portrait? You're a very unique clientele. How do you find those clients?
it's all through social media. Facebook. I use Instagram a little bit, but Instagram just drives me crazy, especially for photographers, because you spend, all this time trying to come up with a great composition, and they say, okay, we're going to screw that all up so it fits within our format.
Right.
So I don't like that. Although some of the images actually appear better on Instagram because they made me crop it in a way that is better. But I don't feel like there's much interaction on Instagram. It's either like or don't like, and they're to the next image.
Yeah.
Whereas like other platforms, they have the time to maybe blow the image up to a better size for one thing, and then they can look it over a little bit. What's really interesting to me is that when I post images, you'll notice my last 4 or 5 posts where I posted images, I used to post one image at a time. And it's like, okay, I quit doing that because I like a group of images, because here's a group of images and surely there's one that you don't think completely sucks. So you might hit like. But one thing that I found really interesting about my work is that the last 2 or 3 images don't ever show on the post.
Yeah.
But they get just as many or more likes than the rest of the images. So that gives me some great feedback to me that people are taking the time to look at those images individually.
Yeah. They're scrolling through them.
So that means a lot to me. And a lot of times you'll see where I've posted on the last image, thank you for taking the time to go through these images, because you would not have got to this one without scrolling through individually. So I really appreciate this feedback.
Can we go to some of those images, John? Maybe.
Yeah, I think I was playing some before. Let me go back again. I'm just on your personal page because I think your other page, it was stuff from like 2012 and 13 and stuff.
Yeah, I've just kind of tried to get away from the whole commercial thing, and I'm not really a big fan of buying into Facebook's, hey, you got to pay us so people can see your shit type of thing. It's not like Facebook is hurting.
No. Is this newer stuff here?
This is probably the latest shoot that I did. And this image here is really odd for me, because I actually let her girlfriend pick out the outfit and things. Her girlfriend had cut her hair and things like this, and she hasn't really modeled before. But the girlfriend, when she started seeing all the stuff in the studio, she saw this dress and she's like, oh my God, Jenny, you got to wear this dress. You have to wear this dress.
That's cool.
So to make her feel involved in the shoot, and I thought she made some great choices. Pretty much, we should call it control freak photography, not iWorks, because I decide the hair, makeup, everything. So in this second look, she also picked out. So these are the only 2 looks in probably the last 8 years that I let somebody pick out besides me.
What would you have done if they had made really bad choices, in your opinion?
I would have said, wow, that looks like shit. Because you know how I am. You know,
No filter, just the truth.
Sorry.
So you obviously went along with it, and this is unusual for you, and you approved the look, and it obviously worked. Can we go back to that first dress?
Yeah.
This one. This is, you own that dress?
Yes, I purchased this dress.
It's very early 70s, I think. It's very vintagey. Is that a look that girls...
It's also got like an East Indian type of feel to it.
Yeah.
That's how John is seeing it, how I see it, but they saw it exactly how you see it, Robert.
Yeah.
Because this girl is all into vintage. She has a lot of early 60s or mid 60s and early 70s clothing that she wears. She visits vintage shops all the time. So they saw it as you see it, Robert. But I've used it how John has
interesting.
suggested.
I have a millennial living in the house, and they're all about vintage. I actually shot a wedding last Saturday, and one of the things they were doing on...
Could you go back one image? Sorry, go.
Yep.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Yep. Go ahead, Rob.
I just want to mention real quickly, the wedding I shot last Saturday, they went in for a tintype. Tintypes are back. It's like, talking about vintage. This is like, you make a wet negative in an 8x10 camera. It's like insane. Anyways.
Well, why are they doing that? Because they want a different look than what everybody else is doing. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's
that
cool.
they're bringing these old processes back.
It's cool.
I wanted to stop at this image real quick because I took this profile image, and she turned to the side during the shoot, and she didn't say anything at the time, but I said, "Dude, kid, you got a beautiful profile." Because like the last kid I shot, I heard stealing this from another photographer, but he's like, the last kid I shot looked like a freaking aardvark. I mean, the kid could suck ants out of a log across the street. She looked great from the front, but so I used that quite a bit. So anyway, when I sent her the images, she wrote me back. I said, "Do you mind if I post these images?" And she said, "I'd rather you not post the profile picture because I feel very self-conscious about that one."
Oh.
And the first comment was, and then she wrote me back a few minutes later and said, "I need to get over my insecurities. So please go ahead and post it if you want to." So I did. And it's almost the most commented image of this set. And 2 or 3 people specifically mention her profile, which I think is awesome.
It's gorgeous.
So,
it's gorgeous.
It is. Yeah.
It's movie star perfect. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think so too. So I'm going to write that to her. Of course, I wasn't like, obviously she has a beautiful I was like, "See, kid, I told you that I was right and you're wrong." So bam, dude, in your face.
Back at you. Do you have that black leather outfit? Is that yours, or did she bring it in?
No, it was different pieces that I had. Yeah.
All right. So you have a pretty healthy collection. John, can you go back to the image with I'm just not that one, the one that you were just at. Right there.
Okay.
Nope. Yeah. I'm really curious about this one. It looks like a cross, a crucifix of some sort with a poppy and then another crucifix on top of it.
Yeah.
There's almost hints of East Indian / Christianity / the circle behind her. What's going on here? Can you elaborate on this one?
Catholic iconography and early Byzantine art. I love that kind of stuff. So I made this headdress, and I thought, well, this looks pretty cool. So let's go ahead and make it golds. And then I found this wire cross at the dollar store, and I thought, well, I could cover that with. I think they use it for Memorial Day here in the States.
Right.
They cover it with ribbon or embellish it some way. So I used that. And then this was just a Christmas ornament, the cross there in the center. So, I always do have ideas floating around in my head. And then there's some stable ideas, always this kind of religious iconography that I find artistically very pleasing, and the fact that I'm old enough now that I could probably I might walk away from this webcam and drop down dead. So it makes you think a little bit more about mortality and where you're going to go after this. So maybe those kind of things come into it. But I had thought about creating an image that did incorporate maybe numerous religions where it was very obvious, where, you know, we're all one type of thing. And maybe that's because of the influence of what's going on in the world right now. But, you know, we still want to separate everything. You know, and we want to put everything into little boxes. And if you're this, then you can't be that. And, you know, so a lot of times, I will say this, though, that I'm like Marcel Duchamp in the fact that it's my job to put the images out there, and the viewer completes the image by their interpretation of it. And it's not for me to argue what their interpretation is unless they would say something disgusting about it. And then I would be forced to argue that point a little bit. And, you know, and I will say that on my profile, we talked about this the other day. If I post a picture of a male model, which I don't very often because there's not males to shoot here, then I will get all kinds of comments from women about how hot he is available, they screw Jesus or whatever, because I did a Jesus figure, some really inappropriate stuff. I never get that on these portraits of these girls, which is awesome because I'm like a dad to some of these kids. So I'm pretty chill most of the time, but I can be a silverback gorilla in about 2 seconds.
When the time is right.
Exactly.
So there's almost a reverence for it because of those reasons. And so you mentioned iconography. Do you follow any artists who are of that bent? You know, like, you know, I don't know if you ever heard of Jonathan Pajot. He's got a pretty popular YouTube channel, which I tune into once in a while. I like mythology, you know, Joseph Campbell, all that stuff. That stuff I've always found very, very fascinating. So that what you just described in that image kind of falls in that realm. Do you follow anyone in that particular area, or?
I really don't. I'll have to look up this guy.
He's from Quebec. He's quite interesting. What about another image? There's something there we can talk about. These are all pretty recent, right?
Let's scroll up for just a minute, because there's one image that is kind of interesting to me. These ones with the yarn. I'm pointing at it on my damn monitor. Can you believe it?
These ones?
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of times we overthink everything. So I'm walking through Walmart and I see this yarn and I think, wow, that could be cool as hair. So, I mean, this is a 2-minute outfit. And you know, Dina does the makeup to correspond with the hair, so it works. And then, of course, the kid is beautiful, so it just works for me. But a lot of times it's these things in stores or whatever that will spark this imagination. That's what I'm saying, that creativity doesn't come from nowhere. If you start with nothing, you're going to end up with nothing. You have to have a starting point. So
makes sense.
Cool.
Totally makes sense.
I got to ask you another question, because I wanted to go back to this one. I might as well bring it up now. You said you spend time talking to them and connecting with them while Dina's doing the makeup and that. Obviously, when you're doing the hair, you're still continuing that conversation. So I'm just thinking that is a pretty valuable process and experience that really helps you connect with them and somehow puts them at ease, gets them to some degree on the same page as far as the vision that you're trying to create through the ideas. And you're also inspiring them, because you just said a few minutes ago that you tell them to, what was the terminology you used, Brian, when you said, I want you to feel like you're the best at this or something of that nature? What was it you said? When you're telling
maybe I think I was referring to like elegance, or maybe haughty or something like that. I want you to feel like you're superior to.
You actually tell them that.
Yes, exactly.
So
But I also balance it with like, but don't get into this too much. Don't tell me to go get me some water, bitch, or something like that. We have to
make me a sandwich.
Exactly. When it's shutter clicks, you're fine, but when shutter stops clicking, we're into another.
They appreciate you for the way you are. Obviously, your personality is very distinct in that, and
Well, it's like all human connections. Some do and some probably don't. Some would probably prefer not to say anything and them just get up and do whatever they want in front of the camera and choose everything. Because I can tell you that there's a lot of young ladies that would rather look hot than they would artistic. So I don't mean that in a bad way. No. I'm just saying that that's what today's culture is cultivated. You're not going to find a lot of probably this kind of stuff.
No.
Even some of these kids won't post a lot of these pictures on their portfolio because it just doesn't fit with what today's society conforms to. It's not going to get a bunch of boys saying, "Wow, you're super hot." Well, they might on this one since the chick's actually on fire. But,
it's very painterly. This is one I think it almost looks like she's coming out of a painting.
That's cool. Anything that refers to a painting makes me feel good. Now, this actually was a preconceived idea. It was I was reading a book and it was talking about Stravinsky and the Rite of Spring and how there was riots almost in 1913 when the ballet was first performed. But I went back to the Firebird because it's one of my favorite ballets. And I thought, well, we'll do a Firebird shoot. So I just put some stuff together at the studio, and then I covered it all up with flames. There's a few images that aren't covered with flames. But, I did write this kid, and I knew that she had taken dance. And, so that inspired me as well. I think the term muse is used way too often.
Right.
But I think that this kid did inspire me to even want to pursue this more since she had taken dance before. And then when we got in the studio, she's like, dude, it was tap dance. I was like, oh, shit. Well, I don't remember the Firebird ever being tap dance. But, maybe we'll create a new version of it. No, that's but awesome. I wrote her. And I said, these are a couple of the poses, don't mimic these, but this is kind of what I'm looking for. And I had taken some screenshots from watching the Firebird on YouTube, a couple of screenshots, and sent her those. So she knew coming into this shoot that she was going to do this. But that's pretty rare for me.
So you mentioned something a minute ago where some girls want to go and they just want to look hot. But, I'm thinking, are they mostly, they're just a little bit, they just don't know any better? They're sort of naive in that respect? Is that a thing? And, you sort of bring them the vision and then they start to sort of open up to that new level of, oh, maybe we're going to do something more artistic, more different, more unique. And they have an appreciation. Does that sort of...
sometimes I get people that come to the studio and say, I just want to do something different. Right. I want to be shot because every time I go to a photographer's studio, the first thing he does is throw a bikini at me.
Right. And
so I want to do something different and artistic. And they do mention the word artistic a lot, which means a lot to me. But I'm afraid and I try to talk to some of them about this, and maybe I've got it all wrong, but they put too much emphasis on likes and trying to be an influencer and this kind of stuff,
right.
On Instagram. And I can, and sometimes these get great feedback on Instagram, and sometimes people just absolutely hate them.
Yeah.
So, but you have to look at their followers. If she's been posting bikini pics every day, and then the next thing she posts is she's got yarn for hair, which this kid would be totally different. Then they're like, what the heck? Huh? Is this a joke?
Yeah.
Because they're not in the artistic mindset when they're looking at her profile. They're expecting one thing and they're getting surprised with another. Sometimes they're surprised in a really good way, and other times not in such a good way.
That's some pretty good points. We're coming up to an hour and a half, so we're going to close her down there soon, Brian. I really appreciate you taking all the time to share your insights. And it feels like I've never met you before, but I've had so many webinars and seen you speak twice in person, and always a wealth of information. Maybe I just got a really bad memory or not. No, I think it's interesting to go down these different areas. I learn a lot. So
I think it's a matter of progression, though.
yeah,
I'm not the same photographer I was 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
yeah,
Yep.
And if you don't evolve, you will die as
Yeah.
a photographer.
yeah. It's like a unicycle, right? You gotta
Yep.
keep pedaling. Corny metaphors for you. I got to ask you a question about movies. I don't know why I thought of this movie, but it's one of the many movies I watched during lockdown. This was, I thought, one of the best movies I've ever seen. And you mentioned fashion designers, so I'm going to ask you: have you ever seen the movie Phantom Thread?
I have not.
All right.
I need to see this. This is the one with Jeremy Irons. Is that correct?
No, it's not Jeremy Irons. It's he might be in it, but the main character is the same guy that did There Will Be Blood. What's his name? Famous, considered one of the best actors of all time.
Gosh, Daniel Day-Lewis?
Thank you. That's him. Now this was his
Yeah.
last movie, and then he retired.
I need to see this movie.
You need to. It just blew me away. When I like a movie, I like a movie with a deep story and that goes down different rabbit holes. I'll go online and Google the movie title plus Reddit, and I'll go find these conversations because I want to know what everyone else is saying because I have so many questions. But this one's got to do with fashion and a whole bunch more. It might really you might find it very fascinating or not.
I'm
Curious.
sure that I would. I found myself watching more biographies lately because it's interesting because when you research an artist, you'll read what the writer's interpretation of that artist is a lot of times. So if you're going to research an artist, at least find two sources. But then you can go to YouTube and listen to a 1968 interview with Marcel Duchamp, and everything everybody's saying about him is horse shit because he says exactly what, is what.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lovely poster.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Anyways, just thought I'd mention that. I was curious. I'd like you to get back to me on that and tell me what you thought of it once you do see it. So
I will watch it for sure. Thanks for
we'll go from
sharing.
there. So yeah, let's wind her down, guys. If you're watching this, whether live or replay, there's a bunch of replays with Brian. A lot of, I'm going to say technical, but I don't want to say technical because you go into the composition of art and whatnot, and it's like a kaleidoscope of information. I got a lot of replays with Brian. I'm putting it all for free for everybody in this Facebook group. I posted one the other day, and there's about 6 or 7 more from the last 5 or 6 years with Brian, and it's fascinating, absolutely 100% fascinating. I'm just filled with gratitude for having you here, Brian. And John, do you have any final questions for?
No, I think I've learned a lot myself. I do every time we come on these podcasts. I learn because I'm meeting people that I've never seen before or met. I've never met Brian before today, and I've been a member of NoBS for about 13 years, and I've seen I think bits and pieces of the webinars, but I've never actually got to talk to him.
They're
So
quite
it's been
good.
great. Yeah, and then one guy, Dave Junior here. I'm not gonna get through the whole thing because he was talking about how you inspired him about a lot of stuff. But one of his first things was maybe you should start selling your work so that we the masses could own pieces of your mind.
Yes.
Dave Junior, one of the first people that actually believed in me and has really helped shape where I went with the education and that kind of thing, which has, is just as rewarding as making somebody feel good about themselves. When somebody comes back to you later and says, you changed how I shoot and how I see things. I mean, when you feel like you have that kind of an influence, and then they tell me they're out of a job and they're, and they borrow a few bucks, then it kind of kills the whole deal. But no,
Especially with somebody like Dave. He's
he's an amazing man. Amazing man.
I've had him on a few webinars, and I noticed he signed up for this. I noticed this last night. My first thought was, I'm going to go after him and get him back on one of these. That would be cool.
You got to have him, because there's no more inspiring individual that has been in my life than Dave Junion.
Well, he's a little bit weird, but no.
Yeah, I mean, he is weird. I mean, he's a freak. Like, I'm sure he's from another planet.
Yeah.
And, but you know,
so are you. You're way out there in the outer perimeters of the galaxy. So
even Lexi Miles, I believe it was her that said that Brian's inspired her to study, incorporate different types of traditional art styles into my photography and even modeling.
Yeah.
So she was thanking you for that.
I gotta bring up something I mentioned earlier about somebody I had a webinar with last year. I just found it. Her name was Tracy Bosworth.
Yes, that's it.
She said she's face blind.
Yeah.
This somehow creates ability to focus on the eyes. Her biggest mentor is Arthur Rainville. And anyways, we got in deep, and I'm going to put that replay in the Facebook group too, because I feel it's an interesting topic. Back onto the topic of the rapport and the connection you have in person when you're dealing with and photographing an actual client. I think there's a lot to that, and we touched on that, and you opened up a whole series of doors for me, Brian, and
awesome.
I'm gonna run with it. So we'll let you go. Any closing words, anyone?
Well, for me, the appreciation that you think enough of me to have me on this show, and that you've done so much to help inspire me and keep me going educationally wise, because the statement "teachers teach because they can't do" is totally a falsehood. I've learned more by knowing that I had to educate people than anything. But there's a million photographers out there. You've had me numerous times. There's nothing that could be a bigger compliment. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And John, it was very nice meeting you. It seems like I've seen you somewhere, but there's a lot of bald dudes
I tell everybody I got that Vin Diesel rock look going here.
Don't push it.
But no, I agree, because even like Rob always says, you can learn more from somebody who's actually doing the work in the trenches, learning and doing it at the same time, than somebody who just for 10 years has been sitting behind an office and telling you how to do it. You learn more when the person's actually out there doing it. So, and I respect people more. I'll learn more from them, and I'll take more from them, knowing that they're practicing right at this minute when they're telling me how to do it. So
that's it. Now, if we could get the kids in here.
Yeah.
That's the problem. You go to these conferences, there's no kids.
No.
Everybody's already tried it, and they've got their ass handed to them. So that's why they're there. They're trying to learn more. But we can't get 20-year-olds to understand that.
It's that generation where they know it all right now. They don't need somebody telling them. They think they know it all.
Is that what it is?
Yep.
I think as professors, I think that they think they're going to get this degree. They're going to walk out and open a photography store and become famous.
Yep.
And they don't learn anything about business.
Oh.
And a fine arts photography degree.
Yeah.
So, and
totally
you'll be seeing the statement come on my Facebook within the next few days, because people will be graduating. That, if you think you're going to run out and start a great business right away, you're going to be destroyed. Yep. Because until you get to these conferences and come to these things, like Rob's whole idea behind NoBS Photo Success is, and learn how to make a living at this, is if that's what you want to do. There's formulas for it.
Yep.
Somewhat.
And they change constantly, but it's I don't know.
It's true. There's probably like about 10 to 15 photographers, professional photographers in my little small community here, and only 2 of us are brick and mortar stores. The rest of them are all our studios. The rest are all out of their house, just doing it part-time, because like you said, I tell people, go take a business course. You can learn photography. You can learn how to use your camera, but learn how to do business, or you're not going to have your own studio, and you'll just be doing it now and then, or give it up altogether. You'll get frustrated.
That's it. That's it exactly.
Okay. We're out of here.
thank you so much, sir.
Peace out. Thanks, Brian.
you, guys.
Appreciate it. John, we'll talk to you later.
All right, take care.